In a notable shift, the United States has issued a 30-day ultimatum to Israel to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza as elections approach. This movement has sparked a debate. Is it a genuine effort to alleviate suffering or merely political maneuver by Democrats seeking electoral support? As Gaza's plight increasingly influences American politics, we must question the sincerity of U.S. intentions and the potential impact on aid amid ongoing challenges. With growing pressure from young activists and international voices, will this moment lead to a meaningful change, or will it remain a fleeting political tactic? Join us as we explore the complexities of this critical issue and its implications for Gaza's future.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
As the heartbeats of Gaza echo through the silence, a very tragic struggle unfolds. The shadows of conflict illuminate the path of change in American politics. With the elections approaching, we must ask, will the plight of Gaza spark genuine compassion or become just another political tool?
The ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza has increasingly become a focal point in American politics, especially with the upcoming elections. After a year of relative silence, the U.S. reportedly seeks to pressure Israel to improve conditions for Gaza civilians, given a 30-day ultimatum. This shift in policy, however, raises question about the sincerity of U.S. tensions, as many believe it is politically motivated rather than genuine humanitarian concern. Recent protests across American universities, driven by young activists, have highlighted the plight of Palestinians, reflecting a growing concern among younger voters. However, the Democratic Party's stance appears influenced more by electoral pressures than commitment to Gaza's people. With progressive voters dissatisfied with the Biden administration's handling of the conflict, candidates may feel compelled to shift their positions. As the election approaches, the humanitarian situation in Gaza has transformed into a pivotal issue that could sway voter opinions, especially among Arab and Muslim communities. The question remains whether this newfound focus will result in meaningful change or merely serve as a political tool.
As violence escalates in Gaza and Lebanon, experts discuss U.S. reaction, Israeli lobbies' influence, and potential Iranian involvement in the conflict. We're joined by Ahmed Maharim, a political analyst from Washington, and Dr. Hamid Faris, an international relations professor from Cairo. A very good day, our guests, and thank you very much for joining us on our show. Mr. Maharim?
Yes, please.
A very good day, and it's a pleasure to have you with us on the show.
Pleasure.
Sir, what prompted the United States to take a more active stance on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza at this point specifically? And is it tied to any specific political or strategic objectives at this point?
I think it's a good question, but if the question for me, I can answer yes. Unfortunately, on the ground, not so many people can believe that what American administration under Biden is seriously can be taken by the administration of Benjamin Netanyahu or the Israeli cabinet. For almost 1 year, we observed what happened with the UNRWA and how many attacks from the Israeli army to the facilities and the places where UNRWA is giving food assistance, educational assistance, and all other facilities like medical assistance as well. One of the objectives of Benjamin Netanyahu is to destroy the story of UNRWA for years and decades, and they create.
Why, sir? Is this one of his main objectives?
They create a false story that 7 members of the UNRWA have been engaged with Hamas, and that was a false story. Unfortunately, at the time,
all their stories are false, sir.
The false story is you cannot estimate hundreds of staff are working, and some of them, even through they were trying to be Palestinian or Arab staff working with the UNRWA. You cannot have proof. Nothing as a proof was already declared that they are working with Hamas or against the community of Palestine. But unfortunately, America was the first country, followed by some European countries, blindly that they stopped helping or giving the assistance to UNRWA. But finally, again, the international world realized that it was a false story, and there is very essential need that UNRWA has to come back to the ground. America is trying to advise Israel at that point and giving a limit time of 30 days for the humanitarian assistance to be on the ground for the Palestinians. I think that's a good hope, but America is trying to give a good impact to their people. We have almost less than 1 month for the election, but I am quite sure that it's not going to be easy for Israel, for Benjamin Netanyahu to consider that. It's another promise from America, but on the ground,
yes, sir. As you mentioned the elections at this point, do you think that it is a genuine effort from the United States to alleviate suffering, or merely a political maneuver from the Democrats or by the Democrats seeking electoral support at this time and at this point, sir?
The strikes of the students in the university and the strikes of the Americans on the streets, it's increased even for the last few days and weeks, asking the government of America to do something for that, because it is shame on America to give all this military and financial assistance to Israel, and still not enough to stop what happened for the last 1 year in Gaza. But again, they are extending and going to Lebanon and giving hard time. And also they are dreaming that the third dream of Benjamin Netanyahu is to forget about Gaza, forget about Lebanon, and he keeps an eye on Iran. So
okay, let's move on. Sir, let's move on to Dr. Faris. Dr. Faris, Egypt has historically played a crucial role as a mediator in the Gaza conflict. How do you assess Egypt's current efforts to provide humanitarian aid and its diplomatic role in this crisis, sir?
Of course, Egypt plays compound roles since the very first moment. It seeks very hard to find a real support to our brothers in Palestine, especially in Gaza Strip, because the Israeli occupation from the very first moment followed all the methods of collective punishment, and they strive to implement their plan to displace Palestinians. They also use the weapon of humanitarian aid to achieve this displacement. That's why Cairo moved from the very first moment and held Cairo Peace Summit with the participation of 31 states and UN organizations. It was the base for the Arab and Islamic Summit, from which it was driven the Arab Islamic group that could polarize and mobilize for the Palestinian cause, which was highly reflected on the voting of countries in UN General Assembly. For the first time, we have seen the approval of more than 143 countries approving Palestinians' right of self-determination and establishment of the state. 12 of them were European countries, most of them coordinated with Cairo, when the Spanish Prime Minister and the Belgian Prime Minister held a press conference in front of Rafah Cross Point, and they confirmed on coordination with Egypt to recognize the state of Palestine if the international community and the European Union haven't recognized yet. Many European countries are moving with Egypt cautiously to unify the international stances in order to achieve the two-state solution. For this sake, Egypt opened Rafah cross point highly for the entrance of the humanitarian aid, even when the occupation closed Rafah cross point after they airstruck it and reoccupied it. The Egyptian state made an airdrop in many places in Gaza Strip in order to deliver the humanitarian aid and to stop the Israeli movements that want to liquidate the Palestinian cause.
Back again to Mr. Maharim. Some argue that the United States' pressure on Israel, sir, regarding Gaza is more politically motivated than humanitarian. Do you believe this position reflects a genuine shift in U.S. policy, or is it driven by the upcoming elections?
Well, I think it's a good hope that what America is doing, a pressure on the Israeli cabinet for the time being, hope it will get a result. But to be practically, we believe that it's the pressure of the election and the Democrat in a position they would like to have some kind of appreciation from different people that live in America, the Arab, the Muslims, and even very good number of the students are really trying to do some kind of work to achieve something better for the future of America. The picture of America in front of the world is really shaky because at that time, America is leading Israel or Israel is leading America. So it's a kind of pressure. I hope it will get results very soon and listen to what America is advising that they need to do for the humanitarian assistance.
Sir, which is in favor of this conflict or this escalating regional conflict at this point? The Democrats or the Republicans, sir? As of course we approach the U.S. Presidential elections, which is in a few days, of course.
I do believe that the escalation comes from the, Trump. From the government, while the Democrat is trying to do some kind of calm in order that to achieve a kind of acceptance for so many voters in different aspects within the nation. The escalating is coming from the other side, from the not the government. The Republican by the president
Trump.
Donald Trump is actually trying to escalate the words. The words. During his speeches, he's always trying to escalate. While
sir, as the race is really tight, you're more optimistic that if Kamala Harris becomes the next U.S. president, it's going to be better for the region, for the Middle East region?
Most probably, the picture showing that for time being, there is so many fear if that the Trump efforts will lead him for the second time to lead America to the better. That's really going to be a very critical at that time. So hope what Kamala Harris is promising their nation and their people and the world will be the best for the world.
We all hope so. Sir, we move on to Dr. Fares. Dr. Fares, in your view, how effective are Egypt's mediation efforts, especially given the current political climate and its relations, of course, with both Israel and the Palestinian factions?
Cairo, given that it's supporting the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause, it's not a mediator here, but it strives to achieve the rights and the principles of the two-state solution and the establishment of a Palestinian state living peacefully next to the Israeli state. But Israel usually takes procedures to undermine Cairo's effort that strived with
Why, sir, does Israel always undermine Cairo's efforts?
Because Israel is seeking to liquidate the Palestinian cause. This is even before October 7th. We are talking here about the resettlement by Israel inside the West Bank. And now they are controlling more than 50% of the territories in the West Bank, in addition to the existence of more than 1 million Israeli settlers and 200 settlements, in addition to the supervision settlement that Israel depended on to control a lot of the territories of the West Bank. Now they are launching a systematic operation in northern Gaza after they have divided this strip into two parts, so they do not pay attention to diplomatic efforts exerted by Cairo with the regional and international partners, and they will not accept by any way to stop this systematic war and the genocide. And they divided that strip. Israel seeks to establish an isolated area in northern Gaza. This is a clear Israeli plan. If Israel believes in the Egyptian narrative and the Egyptian vision calling for peace in the region, we wouldn't have reached this point. In my opinion, we have already entered in an all-out regional war because of Israelis' resistance to establish peace or to find a common ground to establish the two-state solution.
Sir, definitely Egypt played a crucial role in this, of course, escalation and in this very big issue that's taking place all over the Middle East region, and we can never deny, of course, Egypt's very important role. And we move on to Mr. Muharram again, and can we expect, sir, this U.S. pressure on Israel to be sustained, especially, sir, in light of the ongoing situation?
With the pressure from America, the pressure from there is something happened today in the General Assembly. I mean, the Security Council has a very important meeting today, and also in Europe there is the European Council with the GCC also have a very important conference that's going on today. I think the international world has a very essential impact for the next few days to give Israel a lesson that what is dreaming to be achieved in the near future is not easy, and their target of attacking Lebanon will be continue in order that they can expand the war, and including Iran as well. I think something will happen in the very near future. America has to do a very essential role, especially with the local pressure from the election is coming on the next 3 weeks.
Before we dive deeper into our discussion, let's take a moment to examine humanitarian aid to Gaza. Stay with us.
Colleagues, we know that commitments must be followed through on, and that the progress we've seen since last week is insufficient. And so for our part, the United States will continue to make the following clear. Food and supplies must be surged into Gaza immediately, and there must be humanitarian pauses across Gaza to allow for vaccinations and the delivery and distribution of humanitarian aid. A quote-unquote policy of starvation in northern Gaza would be horrific and unacceptable and would have implications under international law and U.S. law. The government of Israel has said that this is not their policy, that food and other essential supplies will not be cut off, and we will be watching to see that Israel's actions on the ground match this statement. Colleagues, we also remain gravely concerned by the evacuation orders issued by Israel in northern Gaza and are monitoring the implementation of these orders closely. Furthermore, all parties must abide by Resolution 2720 and reject any forced displacement of the civilian population, which would violate international law. And let's be clear, civilians are protected under international humanitarian law and may not be declared as combatants if they fail to evacuate. We know winter is approaching. The cold and bad weather will soon set in. 1 year into the fighting, with Hamas substantially degraded, Israeli authorities should be working with the UN and the international community on a plan for civilians to move inland. They should be facilitating, not obstructing, efforts to provide for temporary shelter, and they must restore basic services, including water, electricity, and sanitation. I repeat, the United States calls for this work to begin now. Israel must also cooperate with the UN and the international community to lay the foundation for the reconstruction of Gaza, because civilians must be allowed to return, including to northern Gaza, to rebuild their lives. That can be hard to imagine at a moment of so much suffering and pain, death and destruction. But we must continue to work toward a future where people can rebuild and where people can heal. And for that to happen, there must be a durable peace. And as we've said many times, a ceasefire with the release of all hostages could start today if Hamas, which set this conflict into motion and has no concern for the well-being of Palestinians in Gaza, would accept the deal on the table. It could happen today. Colleagues, I was devastated by the new details from Hirsch Goldberg, Poland's parents, that they shared about their son's execution. How Hirsch's limp body was found on his knees in a tunnel beneath Gaza, a bullet through his skull. How he attempted to lift up his arm, his only arm, to shield himself from the bullet that ended his promising young life. I urge some members of this council to stop turning a blind eye to Hamas's depraved deeds. Its acts of terror, its hostage-taking, its obstruction of a ceasefire deal, its use of civilians as human shields. And I urge members of this council to continue to focus on direct diplomatic initiatives that can save the lives of innocent people who did not start this war and cannot end it, but who bear the cost of it. We must all support the UN as it works with Israel to step up delivery and improve the humanitarian response efforts. This council has an important role to play, but ultimately, as I've said previously, actions on the ground more than discussions here in New York are what will bring real progress. That has been the focus of U.S. diplomacy and will continue to be our focus in the months ahead. Getting humanitarian aid in, getting hostages out, and ending this conflict. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United States. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Acting Under Secretary General Masiya, for your briefing.
Happening now, the UN Security Council meets on the situation in Gaza. And of course, the most important words that we heard was peace, a ceasefire, where all the detainees could happen. Of course, the detainees reported back could happen today, and it could happen now as soon as possible. Stop, of course, turning a blind eye was a comment that was mentioned, and stop using the use of civilians as shields, as human shields, and save the lives of civilians as soon as possible. All the support is needed from the UN Security Council, and actions speak louder than words were her words. Gaza should be now at this point not under occupation but siege. All the civilians there are under siege, and traumatized civilians there. And of course, a call for an immediate ceasefire and the release of the detainees is a basic a situation that should be achieved as soon as possible, and at this point also basic aid, food, water, hygiene, proper shelter, blankets for the winter, all this should be provided for the Palestinians in Gaza as well as Lebanon, and all these end of the attacks on health care and call for an end of displacements as soon as possible. And we go back again to Mr. Maharem. Mr. Maharem, do you have any comment on what the UN Security Council of course, is in a very important urgent breaking meeting that's taking place now? Do you have any comment on what you heard?
Well, the American representative at the Security Council, her speech is really quite good, but to concentrate first on not food assistance or humanitarian assistance is ceasefire. If the ceasefire will take place immediately,
she mentioned an immediate ceasefire, sir.
That's correct. But again, everybody knows, including us, that 80% of the humanitarian assistance used to go from Egypt directly through Ma'bar Rafah Gate. Now Rafah Gate is closed. Can you tell me practically, if within those 90 days, how the food assistance or the humanitarian assistance will reach the people in Gaza while they are suffering now seriously?
Who is responsible for this, sir, at this point, Mr. Ahmed Maharem?
Israel is responsible, and America knows that, and all the international world knows that. Israel sometimes look to the gates how many trucks are laying on hundreds of kilometers waiting for chance to allow to be checked and go inside Israel. I think
okay,
America
sir, in 10 seconds before we wrap up this episode, because I have to wrap it up, could you please tell me who is supposed to stand against Israel at this point to stop its actions?
America.
America. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. This was Ahmed Maharem, a political analyst from New York, and Dr. Hamid Faris, an international relations professor from Cairo. Thank you for your insights, informative knowledge, and thank you so much for joining us. As the echoes of silence resonate, the world watches anxiously. Will the United States choose to confront its complexity, or will the storm continue to rage unchecked? Thank you for joining us in this vital discussion. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes on Qnews. Goodbye.